Hey, good morning. Okay, let's do it like we did yesterday. Everyone in their language. Maybe that will make you more awake, and then you wake me up too. So one more time. Good morning. All right, that's great. Thank you all for being here, and I hope that this is Friday. We've been together now. This is the 5th day of this class. I hope that you are enjoying, learning, and having good time. Why are you so quiet? Okay, so I will assume that that's what's happening, and I hope you're all going to have a wonderful, well-deserved weekend. So good luck to all of you with all your plans. Today, before I get into talking about the theories, and good luck to all of you with the presentations today, I must say that I was very impressed yesterday after when we gave you this one extra hour. We finished at 10:45. I saw many of you are sitting in your groups and working diligently on your theories. A couple of you came asking me specific, very good questions about some of the elements of your theories. So I am confident that you're all going to do a fantastic job today. Good luck to all of you. Before we go there, I have one important issue about how to access information for the class online. And then I have also a couple of things I feel I still need to explain about CRC Fabio and about the model of intervention, the peacekeeping making building. So I will spend maybe 20 minutes on those issues. And I have a couple of real life stories that I think will help a lot. After I finish that, then I will go over the theory. Actually, I have a handout. You can have it now. And we will discuss this list of different theories and how we catalog them. And that will be in the second part today. And then, of course, you'll go and get ready for your presentations. Oh, on your presentations also, I agreed with my colleagues that I will not rotate today. I am not going to go to another group today. I should stay with my own group, makes sense. So I will be in my group today, and then next week or the week after, I will go to the seminar that I have not visited yet. Okay? Good. All right, so now, let me ask you a question. How many of you have used the Moodle or the online resource for this class already and knows how to go there? Okay, so most of you, good. So you are familiar with this page, classroom.upeace.org. And if you are okay, and if you are not, please write it down. It's very important to know this because I'll show you how you access a lot of information and also submit your assignments, papers, and so on. When you get here, and by the way, I am doing this with the support of my very, very good long-term colleague, Shirley Mata. Shirley is the academic support officer for the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies. She has been in this position, I don't know how long ago, because she was here since I came. UPeace, I always say, has some people that are the rocks of this place. They have been here for a long time. People come and go, faculty, administrators, rectors, vice rectors, and they are the ones here holding this place together. And I really say that from my heart, that Shirley is one of them. Without Shirley, I really don't know, and the other people that I mentioned, the rocks, I don't know where UPeace would have been today. So can you please join me in giving a big hand to Shirley and all her good students. And I am sure if any of you had the chance to interact with Shirley, and Gerardo, of course, as I mentioned him on the day one, he's one of those big rocks that I mentioned also. If you have interacted with Shirley, you will know what I'm talking about, how supportive she is, how decent she is. Really an example of what UPeace is all about. Peace, generosity, kindness, support, and she has always been like this. So I asked her to join me today to walk you through this, to make sure people know what they can get out of this Moodle. When you get to UPeace, classroom.upeace.org, you want to select where it says UPM 6001 UPeace Foundation course. If you click here, go ahead, then you get, of course, go to academic year 1920. And then from here, actually, there are two types. First, you have the general, actually, this is pretty much the first one, UPM, UPeace Foundation course. is the general course, and here you're going to find all the lectures we do in the morning, all the handouts, all the readings for every day. And I'm going to show you examples. And then below it are the 5 different seminars with the names of the seminars facilitators. So let's go first and see how it looks for the general one. If you click here, okay. You will see that it includes the syllabus, information about the course when it opens. It will. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. So it has some of the general information, and most important for you here is the sessions. Of course, the course syllabus is there, but then the sessions. So you have session 1. You're going to have here description of the session. You have all the required readings. You have the recommended readings. You have all the handouts that we give you in session 1. Can you click on this and show an example? So for example, the fundamentals of peace and conflict is right there, and so on. And then you go back. Let's go back. Yeah. And the video taping of every session, the recording of session 1. So yes, click on that one more time. You can watch it again. So those who can come late, if you want to watch the videos, of what, I mean, why do you think Gerardo is standing there with the camera? I mean, you think he's just taking a picture of how good looking I look? No, it's much more than that. So he's good morning. All right, so if you miss me, you can always go and open those videos and watch them again. But this might be itself a very good tool for many of you who want to go back on a certain concept, or you remember, day 1 there was this issue that happened, I want to go back and see what was said. So you can always go back and visit the videos, right? All the sessions we have here, and that's why it was so important whenever I have somebody here who gets the microphone, because we want to make sure the sound is clear in the recording. All right, so that's why. Okay, so I think that's a very useful resource for you, especially as you get to write your final paper and and whatever, and for the whole year. This will be available for you, I think, forever. So you can always, and you can download it if you want, and so on. All right. So that's how every session is organized this way. And now if we go back now again to the general, to the course itself, as we said, there are the 5 seminars. So if you open any of the seminars, for example, so this is, you're opening Marietta's, right? Maria Teresa, I'm sorry, Maria Teresa. So it has information for the, but more important actually, this is where you're gonna submit your assignments. Go down a little bit. So submission of individual final paper. So this is where you're going to submit your final paper. You go here, you click, and you will submit. It has also, of course, any announcements, and it explains how you do it, and so on. And of course, again, you have any questions, you can always write to your facilitator or write to Shirley, or see Shirley, and they will help you to go through this. It also has the online discussion. It's something that we really would like to encourage all of you to engage in. It is one thing that we sit in the lecture here and the first part, and then you go to the seminar and there are activities that we do. But we also believe, and thanks to Maria Teresa especially, that she said we should also have a space for people to engage in discussions, critical discussion about what we are talking about. And so she opened that space for you guys to engage in discussions as much as you like, freely. Everyone can see the comments you write, reflections, and people engage and discuss. And all of us are doing the same. I already started one yesterday in my own seminar as well. And did the students, let me ask, the students in my seminar, did you get a message about that we opened that, you did receive it? Oh, good, I didn't. So I need to, I guess maybe because my address is my own address, outlook.com. So I need just to see why I did not get it. Good. So this will be a space open for you to discuss and share and reflect on anything you want to talk about that we did not cover during the class. All right? Did I miss anything? Yeah. What? Oh yeah, and then finally, when you finish the class, and actually you cannot get your grade, am I right? You cannot get your grade for this class if you don't do your course evaluation. So you're going to have to go here and click on course evaluation, and that's where you evaluate the course. Okay? Your evaluation is so valuable. Don't underestimate what we do with your evaluations. Whatever you say that worked well, whatever did not work well, any recommendations to improve things or to change, we take them so seriously. So please do us the favor of filling out your evaluation form and know that whatever you write or score will make a difference in how we prepare this foundation course for following years. Okay? Any questions, any comments? And again, not clear, not sure how to access this, please talk to me, talk to the facilitators, and talk to Shirley. Okay? Anything else, Shirley, that I missed? Very good. Okay, so if you can close this one completely. Yeah. And then, okay, great. And then if you open for me, overview. And, oh, I forgot to give the, oh, I had overview. And then open for me also. And then after that, you want to, overview called, okay, that's it. Great. Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, thank you, Shirley. Bye-bye. Okay, so as I mentioned that I have a couple of things that I feel like, no, I cannot walk away from CRC Fabio or from the model of intervention without explaining a little bit. So for the model of the CRC Fabio, we already explained, I think by now you can understand the dynamics of how it works with the different pieces, how you relate the contextual factors, relationship factors into the 8 elements, and all this is with the objective of how to learn to intervene or to determine a good intervention based on this holistic explanation. At the same time, gracias, señor. I have one more story that I think will help you, two stories actually. One story will help you to really see the connection of the different contextual factors into the relationship, into the behavior that happens in conflict and even the intervention. And it's a true story. And then I have another one that will show you also that I think so far the way we spoke about contextual factors, race, religion, gender, whatever, it seems that we always spoke about it as if they were factors that made things worse. Injustice, oppression, whatever, which happens often, but also they can be used effectively to intervene. So I have another true story about how to use contextual factors and relationship factors to intervene effectively. The first story I'm going to use is about how actually some of those factors and relationship can result in behaviors that are reflective of culture and class patterns that can be highly abusive. And that story came from my work when I was a public prosecutor in Egypt. Before I joined the National Security Office, I was working in one of the districts of Cairo. And that district I worked in was known to be kind of upper middle class neighborhood. Rich people living there. Like here, if you are taking Costa Rica standards, it would be like you're talking Escazú or something like that. One of those areas that rich people live or well-off people, Escazú. Now, so many, and Cairo, being a big, crowded city, often people don't live in houses, like you see say in the US, for example. Most of them live in single houses or townhomes. No, in Egypt, in Cairo, many people live in apartment buildings. So in Heliopolis, you have apartment buildings, 6, 10, 20 apartments in the building. And every apartment has one of those well-off people, a judge, an engineer, an officer in the army, a doctor, whatever it is, and whether the man or the woman, and they both do fairly well. And they have children going to best schools, and they have a couple of cars in the house, and they have fairly good standard of living for an upper middle class. And every building like this has also a janitor. A janitor is someone whose job is to clean the place, to make sure it is safe, to guard it. And also, this person usually is a very simple person, comes from the village, illiterate, or barely can read and write. And his job is he usually is hired by the owner of the building. And his job mainly is to, as I said, clean, guard, and also take care of the needs of the neighbors who live in the building. And so running errands for them. Meaning like if I wanted to buy some grocery at night and I don't want to go out, I call that janitor. And I say, can you please go buy me cheese and bread and whatever. He goes to the small neighborhood store, he buys the stuff, come back and give it to me, and I give him some tips. Those tips, he becomes a big source of his income. Actually, maybe more than the salary he gets from the owner. Or he gets into cleaning our cars and washing them every other day or so. And you set up an agreement how much you pay him for doing this. So for him, it becomes a great deal that he is taking care of those people, building good relationship with them, cleaning, doing things for them, and get money, and also getting salary, and so on. And usually this guy, of course, he wouldn't live in one of those nice apartments like the rich people. He usually would live in the basement of the building or the roof of the building in a very, very miserable condition. That is kind of like reflecting his poverty and where he comes from the village, underdeveloped. So you can enter one of those apartments, you're gonna see, wow, all those air conditionings and 72-inch TVs and all the great stuff. And then you go to that guy where he lives and you think that you moved 10 centuries back. Pretty much like that. And often when the janitor starts to feel good about his living and he starts to feel that he's confident about his job, he brings his wife and children also from the village. So now that small poor place where he lives now includes him, his wife, and the children. And usually he and the children and the wife will also start to work helping everybody is serving the people who live in the building. It starts to form a bond between them that is almost like a master-servant bond. The people living in the building, the rich people are the masters. That poor guy and his wife and children are the servants. So their job is to just go around and do things for them. And they just give them some tips, give them some money. But here, clearly, there is a big power asymmetry between I am the rich guy, I tell you what to do, and then you go do it for me, and I give you some tips out of my good heart. Something like that. So, and I would say 90% of the time, people manage their relationships in such a gracious way, thanks to the influence of religion and culture, that will make people feel that you have to take care of the poor, you need to be decent to them, you need to be kind to them. So people treat them fairly well. And it becomes such a great relationship over the years. I experienced a lot of that in my life. However, every now and then, it becomes abusive. It becomes that the rich people will actually transgress the boundaries against those simple poor people who are so vulnerable. So in one case that came to me, one time I was in my office, when they told me that there is a woman who wants to see you, and she said that she was the niece of your law professor, whatever his name was. Remember, at that time I was only 26 or 20, not even, I was 24 years old. So I had just finished law school a couple of years before. I still remember my law professors. So I said, yeah, of course, let her come in. So a very elegant woman, very well dressed, comes in, introducing herself as that she is my professor's niece and talking about her professor, uncle. Okay, great. And then I said, so how can I help you? Obviously, nobody will come to a prosecutor office just to have a cup of coffee and chat. I mean, she needed something, right? So how can I help you? She said, I'm here for something very simple. I said, sure. What is it? She said, I live in an apartment building. We have the janitor, and the janitor has a wife. And this wife is known to be very rude and very inappropriate with the neighbors. Everybody complains about her. And the other day, she actually had the audacity to cross the line and the boundaries in dealing with me. She wouldn't tell me what happened exactly. She's just giving code words. She crossed the boundaries. She really misbehaved. So, of course, I had to put her in her place. And then I was surprised that when this happened, she actually went to the police station and filed a report. And the report came to you now, as a prosecutor. And I just want you to dismiss this report, because this is such an inappropriate woman, and she really has caused so much trouble. And that's all I want. I said, okay, let me get the report and see what's in it. So I got the report, I read it, and according to the witnesses, apparently she asked her to do something for her. I can't remember what it was, go buy something or something like that. And the woman apparently went and bought whatever she asked her to do, came back, and they disagreed on either the quality or the price, and she accused her of being a thief or something like that. And what happened is the woman, that janitor's wife, actually answered back. And things escalated. And so you can imagine, in this context, if this woman, the rich woman, is saying to her, let's kind of act it out a little bit. Again, I'll come back to you. You are the one unfortunately, you're stuck with me. So if I was this rich woman and I say to you, are you stupid? I mean, how can you pay this much price for something so cheap? Shouldn't have paid this much, you idiot. And now, given your context, you are the poor woman, vulnerable, you are desperate to keep this job. In this case, what will you say to me if I talk to you like this and I'm the powerful woman with my resources and I'm the rich one? What will you do?
I would say, so sorry, but I just buy the thing you need, and that is actually the price. And what I only can do is buy these things for you. But
you see, she would have said so sorry twice, apologizing. This would have been the pattern expected based on the power structure and the bond that is connecting them. But to the surprise of the whole situation, actually you did not answer this way. You felt insulted and hurt, number 5. And you felt nobody should talk to you like this. You didn't fit the norm. As some of you said, but what about individual adaptation that don't fit the culture norms? So this poor woman didn't fit the culture norm, and instead, you decided that somebody insult you like this, you got to insult back. So instead now, and I'm going to say the same thing again, now I want you to respond in a way that you're asserting yourself and asserting nobody should talk to you like that. So are you a stupid idiot? How can you pay this much? Or are you a thief or what?
stupid? Are you stupid too? Don't you know the actual price for the item you really want?
Excellent. Okay, so now imagine if you were the rich one, and this woman now broke the social norm and pattern expected. How are you feeling now if you were the rich woman? Huh? How are you feeling? Angry. And when somebody of this lower class is talking to you like this, and there are neighbors watching, so you are being embarrassed in front of the neighbors now. How will you react? Slap. So not just yell back. Right now you're going to have to, you escalate, right? You escalate by slapping her, right? Actually, that's what happened. She slapped her. According to the witnesses again. But did she slap her with her hand? So that's slapping with the hand, right? I did it 2 days ago. Like poor girl, every time she said, why did I sit here? Okay, she slapped her. Did she slap with her hand? Think about the culture. Think of the class difference between them, the embarrassment that the rich woman has, the sense of how can you talk to me like this? So it's true, she needed to teach her a lesson. She needed to restore the culture pattern, as abusive as it is. She wanted to restore the culture pattern. She wants to put her in her place. So she wants to do something that will restore this and assert her position as I am much way above you. So she slapped her. With what? Oh, okay. What did you say? All right. That's very important. She slapped her with the slipper. Tell me why the slipper is important here. Like the shoe. Okay.
Well, in our culture, the chancla, it's kind of like it puts the power. When your mom hits you with it, it's like, okay, I took it from my foot, from the bottom, I'm going to hit you with that because I'm not going to touch you with my hand.
Yeah, that means that you are so dirty that even like the bottom of the shoe is what is equal to you. It has a strong symbolism. So here, the hitting is symbolic. The hitting with a shoe in many cultures, or a slipper, can cause more damage, psychological, than the physical. Because actually, I can imagine, maybe she had something in her hand that is metal, like this. And if she hit her with this metal, she would actually cause her more injury physically. But she was not interested in injuring her physically. She was interested in the dignity issue. She wants to hurt her in her dignity, the basic need. Excellent. So to do, you have to take it back. I mean, do you think anything we're saying here doesn't relate? Everything happens in your life when it comes to conflict and peace. You can fit it here. And you need to understand it this way to know how to deal with it effectively. That's the whole point. Great. So hitting her with the slipper is communicating a message. And that's what she told. Choosing to hit her with the slipper was about, like you said, Lisa, that to make sure that she gets insulted in her dignity. I remember actually when George Bush was in Iraq one time, and he was in a press conference, and this journalist, the Iraqi, got mad at him, and he just threw the shoes at him, two shoes, and George Bush was like this, and yeah, you can see the video, I'm sure. Now, I still remember when I saw that on TV, I said, oh my God, what an insult that he's throwing the shoe at him. American media, for the first day or two, actually did not pick on the cultural significance of the shoe. They thought that the guy just looked around, like imagine if the guy was sitting here and he had this water picture, he had the cup, he has the microphone. Any of this could have hurt George Bush more physically. But no, he wanted to insult him in a way that is culturally understood in the Arab culture to be the worst insult, is to hit somebody with your shoe. So it was 2 days later that American media started to say, oh, so the way he chose to hit him with the shoe was intended to inflict as much psychological insult and cultural insult on him. That's the same thing that this woman did. And you have to appreciate that actually every culture has different ways of relating, whether in a positive or negative way. We have different ways how we say things, how we respond, and sometimes we can misunderstand each other if we don't know what is the cultural significance of what we're doing or saying. And to do that, for example, let me try to illustrate it for you to show you how you can misunderstand somebody culturally. Okay, let me see how we're going to do with this one. Okay. All right, let me talk to you. It's okay? Give it a break a little bit. Okay. So tell me, for example, what do you like about Costa Rica so far?
Nature.
Nature.
Yes.
Okay. So explain to me what do you like about nature in Costa Rica, and I'll be listening to you. Explain to me, tell me.
You mean more details, right?
Yeah, more details. I mean, you say you like nature. What in nature in Costa Rica that you like?
So I like the mountains, or the hiking, all the things are green, and the playas, the beaches. Yeah. Well, are you okay?
That's what I wanted. Are you okay? Why did you say, am I okay?
You're like crazy, like doing this thing.
And how did this look to you? Like, it felt like I'm doing what? Yeah, it feel like I am acting.
You mean when I'm talking, you're doing,
What was the significance of me?
you're like,
Yeah,
you don't care.
like I don't care
You don't care what I'm saying.
what I'm saying. And that made you say, are you okay?
Yeah.
Right, like I'm not listening. Okay, where's my Indian friends? All right. Am I good in this? Am I good? Can you tell her what does this mean?
This basically means in Indian body language that yeah, I'm listening to you and
Oh,
I'm
okay,
attentive.
okay.
Yeah. So actually what I was doing in an Indian subcontinent context is actually I am listening to you when I'm talking. And you did not understand and oh my God, are you okay? Should we call a doctor? Now imagine that I told you that my wife is from where? Bangladesh is like from the same culture, right?
Yeah.
And so can you imagine when I said, will you marry me? And she did this. Is this a yes or no? No, that's not true. That didn't happen. But the reason I bring this up in this context is just to show you the slipper has significance. The way you're shaking your head when you talk or do different things can have significance, and it can create misunderstanding, can escalate conflict, can be very problematic. So it's important for us to be aware of those issues. Thank you so much. You did it very well. That's exactly what I needed. Okay, now back to the rich woman and the poor woman. So she slapped her. And I'm reading the report. So I said to the rich woman, well, that's not that simple as you say. It's not like I can dismiss this case. You have witnesses saying that you hit her, and that is a misdemeanor in law, according to the law. She said, but that woman, she crossed the line, and she's still insisting on arguing it from a class perspective. She's arguing everything from the class perspective, but I was arguing it from my legal perspective as a prosecutor. And I told her, well, actually it's more complicated than you think. Because you hit this woman with a slipper, not just with your hand. According to the law in Egypt and in many places in the world, if you hit somebody using a tool, whatever that tool is, then jail sentence is mandatory. So, yeah, okay, exactly. So her reaction was like, what? I will go to jail because of that stupid, whatever, servant, whatever. I said, well, this is the law. I mean that if you hit somebody using a slipper or using a tool, then jail sentence is mandatory. She said, that's ridiculous. And she started, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. And of course, she thinks that she has the legitimacy to speak like this to me because we are both from the same class. I said, I really cannot help. The only way I can help you is if you can apologize to her and come back to me with a reconciliation agreement. Then I can dismiss the case. Again, her dignity, honor, all the stuff is like, no, I don't go apologize to that piece of trash. And she refused. And she said, something is wrong here. I said, no, you just have to do that. And if I wait for you 2 weeks, if you can get me a reconciliation agreement, I will dismiss the case. No way. And she just stormed out of my office, very upset. Even complained to my boss about me. And when my boss reviewed the case, he said, everything is fine, keep moving. She did not come back with a reconciliation report, so we took the case to court. She did not show up to court. The court slapped her with a jail sentence. Only when she was notified of this that she actually took it seriously and apparently got secondary parties, the neighbors, others, to put pressure probably on the woman and telling her that, well, you know, we are neighbors, and to start to play on all the cultural norms and religious norms, forgiveness, let's forgive, let's move on. And I wouldn't be surprised that they actually threatened her and her husband that if you keep insisting on taking this case further, we will fire you and you go back to your village. So they made them realize that we have so much at stake. Our interests will be jeopardized. Whatever they did, but they ended up getting a reconciliation report, and that settled the issue. And then the court dismissed the case. But I share the story after 35 years because I didn't have this understanding of such a situation when I did it. I only looked at it, how can I say, from a legal perspective only. But now I look at it from peace and conflict. I can understand the class dynamics here and the cultural dynamics and how they influenced the notion of bond and the power and the expected pattern of behavior of each side, and how secondary parties came at the end to try to settle this issue. And to understand also how the attitudes and feelings and type of chosen behavior that was reflective of culture and class was acted out in this situation. You can see they can write a book about that one story and how you can explain it using all those different pieces to show how culture, class, power, relationship and pieces are affecting the attitudes and feeling this conflict, all the way leading to a certain behavior. And it's ironic here to think of the injustice. I think that's what we need to deconstruct here. How much injustice are we doing to people based on our notion of power coming from our culture and class? This woman, rich woman, assumed that I can come to the prosecutor and say, we are both here. And this woman doesn't belong with us. So we should actually deprive her even of her right as a citizen to go to the police and to file a case and to seek her right according to law. She was trying to bypass all this by relating to me up here and say, we are both of the same class, we understand each other, dismiss the case because she's a poor woman and we should keep her in her place. Can you imagine how much suppression is happening here, how much oppression is happening to someone in a case that probably would have taken 5 minutes of a prosecutor from a legal perspective, but it says a lot about what happens in societies when people are oppressed. Again, I'll go back, based on class, based on gender, based on sexual orientation, based on ethnicity, religion, you name it, whatever society you come from, there is injustice of this type. And if we don't uncover this and understand how it works and how it operates in societies, then we're going to be doomed for more violent conflict. And that's what we need to be aware of. So that's one story. One more story. You want one more? All right, good. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir. I had questions regarding.
Okay, hold on a
at that
second.
time-
Yeah.
have a question, sir. At that time, around 1985, how was the law reinforcement in Egypt? I mean, considering the case, because you said that she was coming from a
Village.
high class, and I mean the rich woman and the one from a poor condition, financial condition. So
Yeah.
how was the law reinforcement? Because finally you at the Supreme Court or the court sentenced the woman to the jail, but with a letter, reconciliation letter, so she was again released.
Yes, the court system typically, and we also as prosecutors, if we have a case of this, like kind of somebody hitting someone or insulting them, there is a crime, but when we get a reconciliation report from the two of them, we write in actually our dismissal report that the neighborhood relationship, the bond, is more important for us from the legal right. Because in this case, there was not much damage happened. Of course, if God forbid, if there was a big injury happened or it reached the level of being a felony, then no matter what reconciliation, maybe it will help to reduce the punishment, but you couldn't dismiss it. But because the case was relatively smaller one, you could dismiss the case because they reconciled.
But I mean the court has already did their decision, their final decision.
Yes, but they did in absentia. Good point. She was absent. So when you are absent,
so
when
this is also a felony.
then
If
you
she was
appeal.
absent,
She was absent, so when she went back to court in person, she went up to, you could have the right to have an appeal if you were absent.
I see.
So in the appeal, she took the reconciliation report, and probably the other woman went with her, so the judge said, fine, dismissed. Yeah, good. Okay, the other case is more about intervention and more on a national level. And that story I saw in Liberia. And Liberia, a country in West Africa. And they had their own share of civil war in the early 1990s. But for 4 or 5 years, this country suffered severely from different vicious conflicts and people killing each other right and left, 6-7 militias fighting and vicious fighting. You wouldn't believe how bad it was. The country was exhausted, everybody was tired, and finally they come to a stable situation when one of the militias actually won over everybody else, Charles Taylor's group, and they were able to just secure the country, at least from a military and the violence perspective. You can imagine that for people who live there, after 5-6 years of killing and damage and destruction and loved ones are gone, you are so exhausted, all you're asking for is just for some stopping of violence. So they were relieved that finally there is some stopping of violence, even if it is a dictator who is ruling us now, for now at least. Things calmed down for a year, but then again there was an eruption of violence happened in the north between two ethnic groups, the Lormas and the Mandingos. Two ethnic groups living in different neighboring areas across West Africa, not only in Liberia. And then fighting erupted in one community between members of both groups. And they got so ugly. Again, killing, destroying properties, putting fire to places, damage, a lot of terrible things. And as the news started to spread, the government was worried that if they don't control this quickly, then the violence between all Lormas and Mandingos, not only in Liberia, but also in Sierra Leone and beyond, probably will spread like fire. So they needed to quickly act and do something. So what they did is they sent a minister, the home minister of Liberia, who happened to be from that part of the world, and they asked him to go quickly and try to contain the situation, to do some form of mix of peacekeeping and peacemaking or whatever he can. So he went there, and I met this guy, so he told me the story of exactly how he went about resolving this issue. And he said that I am from that part of the world, I know these people, I know how they think, and I knew that if I use the typical approaches of mediation or conflict resolution, just tell them, okay guys, what did you want, what was your problem, what was your problem, it will work, but I needed to use other things. So he said that before we start, when I got there, I brought the leaders of the two groups. And I sat them in the same room, and I told them, before we talk about what happened and who killed who and whatever, I would like you to just step back and share with me 300 years of relationship of your two tribes or ethnic groups. And now, of course, for many of those cultures, the idea of sit back and tell me the story of your tribe for the last 300 years is not a difficult question. Because people sit from generation to generation, repeating the story to their children. And they know the stories and they repeat them very well and eloquently. So it wasn't a strange question for that culture. Now, why did he do that? He did this because he knew that the history affecting the bond between them is healthy. He had to know that. And if I know that the history between the two of you has affected your relationship in a positive way, then if I'm in a conflict, I can always say to you, tell me how you related to each other for the last 10 years. And you would say, oh, he used to give me presents here, we loved each other, we went to the beach, blah, 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 blah. Good stuff. But if I knew that your relationship was bad for the last 10 years, then it will be wrong on your part as an intervener to try to invoke history if you know it's going to be trouble. That guy, the minister, knew the relationship was healthy and the history of that relationship is very good. So he asked them to share their stories of 300 years. They went on talking about all positive examples of how they related to each other over 300 years. They talked about one time there was a hurricane, and it was your tribe that came and helped us. One time there was a famine that we suffered from, and it was you who came and helped. One time you had an enemy fighting you, we stood with you and we fought on your side. They just kept going on in history, stating positive examples of good relationship and positive peaceful coexistence, until they approached the day they had the fighting that happened. So that's when he turned to them and he said, so are you, the leaders, going to be the ones who will ruin 300 years of peaceful coexistence? How will generations that have passed and generations that will come will judge you? Almost like shame on you that you are the ones ruining all this. In other words, when you think about it, he actually made them shift their notion of being conflict parties. From being the classic, I have a position, I have to stand on it, insist on it, and find you the wrong one and all that. He puts them in a state, he connected history to being a party. In other words, he made you as a party realize that I have to step out of my own personal selfish way of thinking of things and understand myself as part of a long history and a long future that has been positive and should be positive on the long term, and it depends on what I do today. Can you imagine the transformation that would happen to you in any conflict when you think of the conflict in this way? Rather than to think, I want this now and nothing but what I want and look, just being self-absorbed. Instead to think of your historical responsibility and future responsibility. Only when he was able to set them up like this, that he now got to say, okay, now let's talk about what happened. Who killed who and why? Who burned whose property and what was the damage? And started to develop a transitional justice model where they can pay compensation, seek forgiveness, some of them go to trial. They just did the whole combination of the transitional justice process and concluded this with also elements of, and then they brought the whole community to announce the peace agreement that they signed and had the whole community join in a celebration and confirmation that they have now processes to prevent this conflict from becoming violent in the future, and who will be responsible to detect, who will do the early warning, and how we're going to have mechanisms to prevent this conflict in the future. I use this model to show you that sometimes there is good news about how to do the analysis. And don't forget the good news. Don't always search for what will be negative when you analyze contextual factors and relationship factors, because sometimes you're going to discover, wait a minute, there is a positive history and a positive bond that exists for a long time. I can build on this before I get into the classic processes of conflict resolution and so on. So I was really amazed by that example when I saw it. It was written in one of my evaluation reports, and I have seen after that many other positive examples like this. And also I want you to also realize, coming from a variety of cultures, every culture has the capacity for doing things like this. And often, unfortunately, those models don't exist in the books, the dominant books that we read. The dominant books have certain perspective on how to do conflict that is just very basic, but I think that we need to appreciate the complexity and how different cultures can have different ways of dealing with conflict. Those are the two stories that I wanted to share. And then I would like now to go again and close that model of interventions, because there are a couple of pieces that must be clarified. Not this one. Okay. We understood yesterday pretty much what is peacekeeping, peacemaking, peace building. And we understood that this is stopping the violence, this is trying to resolve the immediate issue you have in a conflict, and this is the long term that you try to affect things to heal people, to help them to develop new relationships and be healthy. The three models fit under three grander, wider frameworks. But peacekeeping is part of what we call conflict management. Conflict management means what? It means that I have a conflict, whatever it is, and I try not to solve it fully, but try to bring it to a manageable situation. Think of a workplace. Say that I work in a place with you, okay? And we share the same office. And we are fighting each other all the time, to the point that it is disrupting our work and disrupting the whole organization, because we cannot get along. And that happens in many workplaces. In many situations like this, a manager may realize that, I cannot solve their problem. I don't know why they hate each other. But I care for the well-being of the organization and the productivity of our work. So to do that, I'm going to move you to another office and keep her in this office, so you don't have to interact with each other every day. In doing this, we are ensuring that the work is moving, but we didn't really solve your own problem. As a result, the work actually improves. But did our relationship improve? No, it didn't, because no one worked on that. But as far as managing the conflict, it is managed. We are no longer fighting. There's no more episodes of violence or yelling and all this disruption. That is a form of conflict management. And sometimes that's the best you can do in a conflict situation. And that's why we have those different models. It's not like every time you have a conflict, you must strive to achieve the big stuff of peace building and conflict transformation. This is when things allow for that. But sometimes be realistic and accept that the best you will do is to manage a conflict, and until the situation can allow for you to move to something else. Conflict resolution is more of the, I would say, if you take CRC Papio again, and maybe the question, very good question yesterday about why the sources is number one. Wasn't that your question yesterday? I will say that the reason why the source is number one is because conflict resolution assumes as a process is you help parties in a conflict to move from positions, number three, to understand their interests, number two, and to relate the interests to the basic needs, basic human needs that you feel frustrated. And if you can help people to unfrustrate the basic needs, then you resolve the conflict from the core. So that is the process of conflict resolution. And those who read the basic human needs theory, I hope that in your class today, you will explain that how the basic needs are assumed to be the most important. If resolved, then you resolve the conflict. Conflict transformation is, in addition to resolving an immediate conflict, conflict transformation is about changing relationships, changing you from inside. So that woman who is the rich and slapped her, if she starts to change and to understand that this is an equal human being deserving rights and she's working, and then start to treat her in a different way, whatever intervention happens to help her to do this, and they start to have more of an egalitarian relationship based on respect and work productivity and so on, then I will call this conflict transformation. Meaning you change the relationship, you change the person from inside, and you change the behavior that's happening between them. That takes a lot of work. You cannot change people like this overnight. It takes, that's like we said, the European Union, 50 years of effort, deliberate effort to reach this. And so when you do, if you say I'm going to go in a conflict and work on peace building, and which is part of conflict transformation, you better be realistic that you are not going to see results right away. You're going to see the results on the long term. So your plans and everything and the management of the process should be about long term. But immediate stuff can happen on the level of conflict resolution and conflict management. Ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is to reach conflict prevention. Conflict prevention doesn't mean that I'm going to reach a point that there is no conflict anymore. But it means that we're going to be able to develop mechanisms and structures that will help us when a conflict happens, that we deal with it peacefully. Peace becomes the road. Remember the first day? There's no road to peace. Peace is the road. Conflict prevention is about that. That no matter what conflict will happen between us, we will have non-violent, peaceful means of how to resolve it. To get to that point, it takes a lot of good work, But there are many examples in history of how people developed those mechanisms and were able to prevent conflicts before they erupt into violence. Conflict will always happen, but the important thing is how to handle it, how to deal with it. And if you have the right mechanisms, it will help you to deal with the conflict in an effective way. And then we have, another thing is, of course, that continuum here of negative peace, positive peace, is a famous expression by Johan Galtung, one of the famous scholars in the field, where he refers to efforts of peace that is only concerned with conflict management and stopping the violence. You can refer to as negative peace. Again, to the example of the co-workers, if I am now working, she is working, but we still don't say good morning to each other. That's not positive peace, this is negative peace. I mean, we are not hitting each other anymore, we are not yelling, we are not getting into conflict, but we are not having this healthy, productive relationship as two humans. That is negative peace. To the extent that you move towards transforming all this into something positive, we call that positive peace. All those are tools that can help you as you analyze a conflict situation to determine where do I intervene on those spectrums. What will be the right intervention? Now, one important thing to recognize here is two things. Number one, the reason we have this box up there, conflict analysis assessment, is to say that you have to continuously analyze the conflict. That's why you have all those arrows up and down, because conflicts are not static. It's not like once you assess the conflict once, then you find the right intervention and end of the story. No, things change, things are dynamic. So what if things change on the ground that requires now different form of intervention? So that's why your assessment has to be continuous. Don't think that one-time shot is going to do it with assessment. This has to be an ongoing process. That's one. Second, the model looks very linear, meaning first there's violent conflict, second, peacekeeping, third, peacemaking, fourth, peace building, fifth, conflict prevention. Life doesn't go this way. Life is way too complex to fit in such a linear model. Conflicts can go back and forth. And you need to be also as adaptive as an efficient conflict intervener to know where do I think. Think about, and a good example is the Palestinians and Israelis. They had their share of violent conflict, say, from even before 1948 all the way until close to 1990. Violent conflict by all standards. But then there was effort made in Norway by the US and others to get the leaders to go through processes of how to dialogue, how to talk to each other. And to our surprise, actually, in the early 90s, they declared a peace agreement. And according to the peace agreement, the PLO, which is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, recognized Israel as existing state. Israel recognized the PLO as the sole representative of Palestinians. And the leader of PLO actually went back to Palestine to live in Palestine as the leader of his people. They were very successful, surprisingly, to move the conflict from violent conflict actually to this area between peace building and peacemaking, meaning that you can see elements of both. By the way, and that's why we have those overlapping circles. Everything is done for a reason, by the way. It's not by just to look nice. That the overlapping is intended to show that it's not like there's a clear cut between what is peace building and peacemaking and peace keeping, but sometimes there is also a gray area between the two or interconnection between them. So the Palestinians and Israelis succeeded in getting here. Very quickly, a big jump from violent conflict to here. And as a result, everyone was busy talking about how we move them further here. Post-conflict reconstruction, development, all the good economic cooperation, everybody's talking here. However, the situation on the ground was changing. Many people were still feeling disenfranchised and that they are not really getting the right. Because for Palestinians, the issue of identity, the sense of injustice that happened to them was not dealt with efficiently with this agreement. As a result, we had those uprisings happening in the Palestinian territories, which were called in Arabic intifada. And people started to uprise. Some of the uprisings were violent. The Israelis reacted. And before you know it, we regressed back all the way here. And guess what? We are pretty much here at this point in this conflict. Many efforts were made by Bill Clinton, by Obama, by others to try to move us even here, and it keeps failing. Why? In my opinion, you need to go back to CRCPAB. You go back to the drawing board and analyze again, understand what are the basic needs and interests that are violated, and how the different parties, especially secondary parties, international powers, are affecting this conflict. Only if you do that, then you can have a better chance of finding a new course of intervention in conflict. Any questions, any comments? That concludes what I felt like, no, I will not finish Friday. You will not go to the beach without me explaining this. So do you have any comments or questions before I get into the conflict theories? Piece of cake? Okay. Yes.
It seems I see three stages to conflict, to solve the conflict here. Conflict management first, and then resolution, and then transformation. So my question is, do you think like the previous stage is the precondition for the next stage? Like for EU solve this refugee crisis, it come up with the migration policy at first.
Yeah.
It seems to me it jumped to the conflict transformation. Do you think it should focus on conflict management first and then move on
Very
step
good.
by step?
Okay, exactly. That's the point I'm making. Is again, you can say it's not really everything is this linear. Maybe you can say logically it follows. Things should follow this way, but reality on the ground can include elements of everything. Meaning, you can work on conflict transformation if everything is ready, and you are actually doing good work to help people to transform the relationship and structures and everything. Yet there are some segments in the society or in the community who are actually continuing to disrupt things on the level that needs peacekeeping. So here you need to be adaptive. You need to have maybe some element working on conflict transformation, yet another one is working on conflict management, because if you don't deal with those disruptive elements, they can come back and destroy the whole process. So be actually use multiple methods of intervention. Be aware that things can go back and forth. Don't get stuck that, oh, we already reached peace building, there's no way we will go back. No, you can go back. And be aware that this can happen, or they can happen simultaneously. So you need to have different interventions working for the different symptoms that you are seeing. It's appreciate complexity. Remember that. Don't oversimplify. All right? Good point. I'm glad you emphasized that. Okay, with this now, yes, sir.
Oh, there's one more. Okay. It's probably more of a sharing because like we reached peace building process back then in 1998 in Indonesia. So back then we were in before 1998 we were in authoritarian type of regime in Indonesia, and then in 1998 we reached the process of democratization. But then the process itself is violent because we got a lot of killings and stuff like that. So probably I just realized that even if we reach peace building process, we can just simply go back to violent conflict and
So you have to adapt. That's the point. Being adaptive and aware of the different dynamics that not all of them fitting into a peace building approach. So sometimes you need to have an approach working on stopping this violence, yet you are talking to some of the leaders about how to move forward at the same time. Good. By the way, go ahead, last point, because I have to get to the list of theories. Go ahead.
So I was just thinking about third parties intervention,
Yeah.
and I think that it's just based on my own observation that the third parties interventions are not only just in mostly case in all cases they more focus on peacekeeping or peacemaking. I think that in some cases they have their own let's say hidden goals. Not hidden interest, not to keep this peace between struggling parties, and they don't you think that there is a make sense to think also about interest of third parties?
Absolutely. Where did we do it in some activity where I said that you have to choose? Oh, I remember when we were in Nick, right? When he played here the neighbor and he was trying to solve the problem between them, and we said that he was just a neighbor. All he could do was to help them with the issue of the medicine. But he couldn't be the right one to deal with the issue of the husband-wife conflict and all that. That's one level. But you're getting into another more important point. What about hidden interests of especially international third parties? This is a big problem, and I'll give you an example. Again, true story, one more. But it's a sad one, but true. One time I was working with this very important guy in a European government. I'm not going to mention which one. Great guy. I really appreciate him. We are good friends. And one time we did a workshop on interface issues, bringing youth from Europe and Africa, and he was with me. And he stood in front of everybody. And he mentioned that he worked in Gaza. You know, Gaza and Palestine, all that. And that he loves Gaza because of all the work he's done with the people, and he saw the resilience and all that stuff. And he said that he stopped doing this work because he was working for his government, and his government was giving him like good amount of money, millions of dollars for reconstruction and all this peace building work, right? To build the hospitals, to build, I don't know what, schools, and do all the great stuff. And he was happy doing what he's doing. But at the same time, his government actually signed a contract with Israel, selling them like bombs, new kind of sophisticated bombs, and his government made like $100 million out of it. Few weeks after, the Israeli government, in one of the fighting with Gaza, they used those bombs to bomb the Palestinians, destroyed the hospitals and schools and whatever stuff that was there. And then his government came and gave him 20 million and said, go ahead, use this 20 million to fix the stuff that was damaged. So he said, when I saw that, I said, no, I am being used. I'm being used as a tool. They have other interests in making, they made 80 million. They took 20 million to make themselves feel good and to make him feel good in what he's doing, but there is another 80 million that was used in the pockets of the rich ones. Imagine, he was saying that about his own government, about his own experience, and why he now is doing things outside of the government context to do that. So yes, assessing the interests, assessing the agenda. I mentioned on day one, I think, or day two, that international conflict is ugly, and the people don't have that notion of bond and culture that bonds them and connects them, that will give some moral responsibility. And instead, they get stuck into who's the powerful, how much I'm going to gain in this situation versus another. So yes, and I think when you think of the small countries who suffer, you wonder, what are we doing? We are just being played like ping pong. Hold on.
Notice that even third parties, in some cases, they can manage this conflict by their own. They have their own game.
Okay. Then in this case, in our analysis, we need to say, wait a minute, you're not really a third party. You are probably like a party in the conflict. You're just pretending to be a third party. But I want to be careful also with conspiracy theories, and also again to appreciate that you can even influence the third party to change. How you can do that? Maybe rely on the people-to-people diplomacy. Get the people in different powerful countries to influence their government. I think of the story of Vietnam. It wasn't a third party, but I really say, wow, look at the example of how Americans were fighting in Vietnam, themselves directly, and having other people fighting on their behalf in Vietnam. And the more people in America felt that this war is not a just war, this is not our war, we should not be doing this to other people, it was the American people who demonstrated on the streets and forced their government to stop that war. If you can get more people, and thanks to social media today, we have an opportunity to connect more and to influence each other away from those governments who seem to be driven by economic interest and power interest and so on. So, good point. I'm sure stuff like that is what you'll explore through the whole year. Okay, with my list, it's 15, 20 minutes, I just need to give you an overview of the chart. The intention is not for me to go in details explaining every theory, not at all. Because you will learn a lot of this through the year, and you will do some of this in your presentations today. But I just want to show you this classification of different theories and how they work. I mentioned from the beginning that this field is multidisciplinary, and that we rely on different theories on different levels, influencing how we analyze and how we think of conflict. And the way I classify this here, I'm talking about that there are probably three ways. The concept of micro theory, meso or middle theory, and macro theory, all those three are very common in the language of sociology and in different humanitarian field, humanity studies and social science studies. That there are some theories concerned with understanding the big picture, the macro level, societies and how they operate. Some theories try to focus on certain phenomena within society, and other ones focusing more on the micro level of the individual or the small groups. So if you take this classification, you can start to see how certain common theories in our field fit under those classifications. In addition, we have other theories, or maybe theoretical perspectives as I call them, that cut across all that, because they give more of a kind of deeper influence. And those are the last three that I mentioned. feminism, environmental perspectives, and postmodern perspectives. Let me quickly go over those models and just explain how we understand them. And then, of course, today, pedagogically, we are counting on you to be the professors. You are the ones who are going to explain many of those theories in your classroom. So you have a big role to play. Now, on the micro-level theory means what? It means that we are trying to understand how the individual behaves in conflict, what motivates them. If I take CRC Fabio, I will say that is number 5 and 6. The element related to what attitudes and feelings develop you and how it reflects in behavior. That is the focus to a great extent of those theories. They try to explain why people behave the way they behave, what motivates them, what makes them angry and lash out. So you have some psychological, of course, biological theories were used often to try to look at our connection to our primate origin, meaning you look at the apes, you look at the animals and how they behave, and then you try to see, is there something we can learn from here that can guide us? And I have to say now, is thanks to the new technology and the cameras that National Geographic has, every now and then I see something on Facebook that amazes me about animal behavior. I mean, on one hand, you think animals are driven just by food and water and fear for your livelihood. But then, no, sometimes I saw in some of, and what I like about those National Geographic stuff is this is not acted out. I mean, like yesterday somebody said, is this acting, the video I showed you yesterday? And I said, I swear it is real. It was not acting. But it's difficult for humans to say, is this acting or not? But in here, and when you look at animals on a video, they are not acting. For sure, they are doing what they think they should do as species. So sometimes you see, like I saw, like, for example, a lion attacking one animal of any type. And then you find that actually the other animals are scared. First they run away. But then they start to gather and boom, go and attack that lion to save their member of their species. Or even save other species. It's just amazing to see that they seem to be driven by factors that have moral dimension to them than simply survival. And there's so much to learn from this. So a lot of work like Goodell, who is a very famous person, worked on theories of how we look at the apes and the gorillas to inspire how we understand ourselves as humans. It's been great kind of work. And there's another scholar named Wilson, also did a lot of work on biological tendencies that we have as humans. The question is, are we biologically destined? Meaning, are we biologically determined that we'll behave in certain ways? Is violence part of our innate, that we'll always be violent? Or can we change or not? This is really, and so this kind of theory is taking us to this biological determinations to determine or to understand our behavior when we are in a conflict situation. The frustration aggression hypothesis, and I think those who will do relative deprivation will touch on it. It does go into more of this basic notion of that when you are frustrated, certain cues will lead you to think that, to feel that you should react in an aggressive way in order to restore that sense of safety, back to the basic need of safety and feeling that, and reduce the anxiety that happens when you feel that there is fear or there is any frustration to your basic needs. And again, here it focuses more on the individual and how the individual will behave in certain situations to react to those emotions and feelings of fear. Psychoanalytical perspectives takes us also deeper within the person to try to understand how our behaviors are going more into our subconscious and into our earlier stages of our life and how this may be shaping how we behave. I am sure many of you have seen in yourself or in people around you that people have certain tendencies, patterns of how they deal with conflict, and you wonder where this comes from. And how often have you realized with yourself or with others that probably that goes back to something happened in your childhood, and it remains to be a big concern that scares you when you deal with a certain situation. So psychoanalysis is about going deeper and trying to heal those issues or discover them so that you can break away from some of the negative patterns in conflict and to learn also how to use something more productive or effective. And then, of course, social learning theory is the good news here, because the social learning theory broke away from many of those earlier theories that seem to be about more that we are just determined to behave in a certain way because of our innate elements or because of the frustration, aggression, and how we will react to our fear. And social learning said, no, you can undo that. Even the thing that you got used to do it in a certain way, there is a way to undo it and to learn new ways of doing things that can be positive. So I would say social learning theory is in the foundation of all the work we're doing. All the peace education work, conflict resolution, and so on, assumes in the heart of it that humans can change. And that we can undo the old learning, cultural or psychological or whatever it is, by offering something else that people can adapt, and that becomes the norm of how you deal with conflict. This is a kind of the category of what I call micro-level theories. They focus more on psychology, anthropology, and social psychology, and biology, of course. Now, mid-range theory, or meso means middle. This is more of relating to specific phenomena that happen within conflict issues, and you try to target those specific phenomena. You are not trying to understand the whole world, you are just trying to take a certain phenomena, such as those who work on relative deprivation or anomie. Those two theories are good examples of meso or middle range theory. Why? Because they are trying to only understand why is it that people sometimes will revolt against their society or against their government. So rebellion as a phenomena is the focus of those theories. Neither is it too narrow looking at the individual changes like the micro ones, nor is it so macro trying to understand the whole world and the universe. It's looking at a certain phenomena, why people rebel, why they go in revolution, versus in other situations. Why people, now I can imagine why people become terrorists, and what will make somebody think that it's okay to go blow up yourself and blow up other people in the process. It's a mid-range phenomena, requires theories that focuses on that phenomena to try to dig in to see why it happens and how we can undo it. So that's where you have those different theories such as relative deprivation, anomie, identity, of course, because identity can be focused on specifically how my identity will be reflected in a certain situation that I feel it is frustrated, I am not happy the way my identity is threatened or not allowing me to do what I want, and how can I handle this issue to transform it. Culture theories, I also put it in the mid-range, and by the way, this is my classification. I mean, you disagree with one and say, wait a minute, culture theory maybe fits somewhere else, or whatever, up to you. But bring a good argument for it. I mean, that is the kind of the critical way you can think of things. We are not expecting you, everything we say here is taken for granted, that's it. No. The idea is to, I think everything you've seen so far is actually critically analyzing conflicts, critically understanding things in a different way. But in addition, we want you to also be critical about what you see here and what you hear. And so if anything you find, wait a minute, I don't think it fits here, please do. I appreciate when you suggest why sources is number one. Yeah, I like those kind of questions. And let's try to see how we can change it, if we can. A culture theory also is a mid-range in my opinion, because it's taking just the influence of culture, which is a big part of how we live our life, but it's not the whole story. But how culture, why is it that when I did, I'm just again, going back, when I did this to you, you said, are you okay? And if it was one of my Indian friends, he would be like, oh, good, I'm happy that he is agreeing. I'm happy he's agreeing. That those cultural differences that can go on a deeper level, this is a very superficial one, but imagine how deep it can get with culture to create conflict or to advance peace. And so that level of culture is a mid-range. That's why I have it there. And then the macro level is more of the theory that try to understand the whole story, how the whole universe is moving, or what is influencing everything, not just a certain phenomena, or not only the individual level. So basic human needs, I see it, I mean, somebody can say, no, basic human needs should be fitting in the micro one. But no, I think it allows also for understanding the foundation of how we behave as humans, and accordingly, how all those structures are formed to address our basic needs. For I feel like it gives this foundation to know why do we set up certain structures in a certain way to satisfy our basic needs, and why when this is frustrated, we're gonna go and fight or rebel or whatever behavior we'll do. The political economy theories, of course, I mean, economy is in the heart of conflict, and I think that we should never forget the power of economy, but also not to fall in the trap of thinking everything the conflict is about economy and money. Just like the other trap is to say all conflicts in history were about religion. Many people say that. I think both are wrong. Yes, many conflicts are about economy, and you can find there's an economic element to conflicts, but it's not all the time about that. As we said, people can die because of their dignity, even when they are losing economic gains by fighting for their dignity. How can you explain this? So, but it is definitely an important theory. And within it, of course, Marxism, I will consider it as one of those political economy theories that goes even beyond that, where the assumption is that the whole humanity has suffered from this subjugation of the elites to the working class, including gender factors, who women have to be subjugated for what we need as elites, like people of color to do what we want, people of different religion becomes a tool used to advance the power of the elites at the expense of the lower class, and to make them think that, you know what, you just have to work hard for us now, and then guess what, when you die, you're going to go to heaven and you'll be so happy forever. I mean, it sees it this way. And everything is about the economic dimension of life and about the means of production, who has control over it, and those who have control will call the shots. As a result, it will create frustration for the working class when they start to become educated and develop some sense of where are my rights, and that will be the right time for them to revolt. That's why in the core of Marxism was that in the industrialized societies is where the revolution starts, because by then there is a level of understanding among the workers that will allow them to revolt. But if you go to the farmer society, to agrarian society, probably they haven't developed that ability to deconstruct and to critically think of what's happening in their own context. And then, of course, I want to also be careful when we say Marxism, we're not saying communism. We're not saying Soviet Union. And I think that's a big problem with this theory, is people relate it directly to the Soviet Union experience. And it doesn't have to be that. Marxism as a social, political, economic theory is amazing. As a theory, it helps a lot. Is it perfect? No. Can you critique it on many levels? Absolutely. But please don't confuse it with the Soviet Union. And then, of course, world religion. And I put a question mark by it because many people may disagree with me. But I believe world religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, any of the religions that exist, they are an effort to have a comprehension of everything happening to us here on this earth, and with an assumption of something else after, for some of them. As a matter of fact, it was amazing when I was teaching in the Philippines, and I discovered that what I think of about religion as a Muslim was very different from my colleagues I met in the Philippines. In the classroom, as a Muslim, I fit within what we call Abrahamic faith, like Judaism and Christianity and so on. So I had a quick quiz for them about Islam, because the focus of the class was terrorism in the Islamic context. So one question was, Abraham, Moses, Jesus are prophets according to Islam. Is this true or false, or you don't know? So they answered whatever, true, false, don't know. And then one student from Vietnam, actually, and then she raised her hand and she said, can you just tell me what prophet is? What prophet is? What is prophet? And I was very surprised it was an amazing question. I never had that question before. But it made me challenge my assumption that I thought everyone should understand what a prophet is. Moses, Prophet Muhammad, whatever. No. For some people, maybe that is not a shared understanding. And we have to explain what is the notion of prophet is to make sure. And then she explained eloquently how the notion of Buddhism, of reaching a state of nothingness, was very different from our notion of a day of judgment, after which, if you did well, you go to paradise. That was like, what? It was for a couple of them, actually, it was not exactly a concept that they can grasp as much as they can understand something different. So that made me realize, of course, religions are different, but all of them strive to do what? To give you almost like a roadmap of how to live your entire life. As a person, as a community, as a government, as a society, and so on. With the assumption that if you follow this roadmap, you will have a peaceful way of living all the way. So I consider them that to take them seriously, especially now with all the phenomena of terrorism and everything. People, can you imagine, as I said on day one, somebody puts explosive belt around their waist, go in the middle of this room and blow us, all of us, to die. And he or she is convinced that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm going to be in heaven. Bye-bye, guys, all of you going to hell, and I'm the one going to heaven, even though I'm the one who killed all of you. Why? My goodness, how can you understand this if you don't understand world religions, and how religion can motivate people, and then how we can undo this to help them to understand that that was evil that you did, and what we need to do is to get people on the peaceful direction using religion itself. That's why I believe that we can no longer continue in our secular ways of imposing on academia only secular ideas. No, you've got to also appreciate that many people in the world live by religion. Whether we like it or not, we don't think religion is important or we don't believe in it, that's one thing. But to dismiss it totally and ignore it as something to understand, I'm sorry, that is not even fitting with the foundation of secularism. And then finally, the cross-cutting theoretical perspectives. Feminism, which I've been talking about a lot from the beginning. I believe, and from my own experience, feminism has inspired me on many levels, and how to think of issues of oppression, injustice. Again, it's not only women, but again, it's every group that suffers because of cultural norms and structures that keep fostering and reinforcing a state where a certain group of people is put down and exploited. And so that's why I say feminism, when you take the essence of it and the main values and foundations, it can influence your understanding of all the other theories. That's why I call it perspective, not to undermine it. As a matter of fact, to say that maybe I couldn't find a better word than perspective, but it cuts across all this. So you can have a feminist lens looking at basic human needs. You can have a feminist lens looking at social learning. You can have a feminist lens looking at any of those theories above. The same with the environmental theories, I think, that are developing now. They seem to be cutting across a lot of this and showing us, like I was doing this research or evaluation in Sudan about natural resource conflict management between people fighting each other over water and whatever. In the heart of all this conflict was what? Environmental changes. And if you don't understand the environmental factors, you cannot understand what's happening between them ethnically. They are fighting each other on ethnic grounds, but really, it's all about the environment and the resources that they don't seem to feel that it is being shared fairly and that they don't have enough access to it. What else? And then the last one is the postmodern perspective. And I think that too is very important as a perspective to keep in mind. Postmodernism started about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, but really inspired many people to rethink many of those theories and to rethink assumptions about how academia and scholarship have been developed, because it challenged that many of this is highly influenced by Western imposed elite approaches to how to see the world. And it kind of concluded that, or the main thrust of postmodernism is that it's not like you can, anything that you see around you and people try to establish as here is the theory, here is the truth that you need to follow, is actually socially constructed and culturally constructed, and it's relative. As much as such, you need to appreciate what is it doing. Is it serving actually everybody, or is it serving certain elites and achieving certain objectives? Almost like the point that Zarina made about, can you look at the third party and understand, is there other motive behind that? Postmodernism is trying to help us to get deeper into critically analyze many of those structures that we are familiar with, theories we are familiar with, and to say that how much are they really serving certain elites or certain groups, and at the expense of others. And how language, how discourses are used to just keep generating the same idea and the same concept as if this is the norm, when actually people are very different from each other. And the way they structure things and articulate them is a reflection of their own context. And that's actually this. So for them, language is a reflection of your own reality. And it is used just to enforce that this reality is the truth. But no, it's not the truth. We need to look deeper into some of those dynamics that create power imbalances, that give privilege to certain groups against other groups. And if we do that, we realize that actually truth is so relative. And that is pretty much the thrust of what postmodernism is. That's pretty much the overview I wanted to give you about the classification of those theories. But then again, today, pedagogically, you are the professors. And we're really looking forward to listen to your presentations and to learn from them. I also hope that during the year, you'll go deeper with such theories and learn about them more and more, and to see how they can inform a lot of what we spoke about for the last 5 days. What time is it? 10, 11? Oh my God, so sorry that I took 10 minutes. So in this case, it's only fair that all of you go back after 20 minutes. So you go 10:30 to your classes, all right? And thank you all so much. You have a wonderful weekend. Really enjoyed working with all of you for this week. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.